If any of you haven't been to an Albion society before, what we try and do is bring together kind of seminal entrepreneurs who are kind of making something happen in society. Clive Dickens, he's a good friend of ours, a good friend personally, and a client as well, which is always an interesting combination. He is founder of Absolute Radio, serial entrepreneur, one of the faces in radio, but he's also a complete geek and has done some really interesting interactive stuff along the way. He was an early investor into Shazam, who, as most of you know, has gone from being the most irrelevant to the most relevant of services on mobiles and is now worth a bloody fortune. So at some stage of the game, I hope Clive will take me out for a very expensive dinner when they sell.
Good morning, thanks for your time. We're from a business called Absolute Radio, and radio is one of the oldest forms of advertising. Commercial radio really kicked off in Australia, believe it or not, in the 20s, and that was where the first real radio stations came on the air with the idea of having advertising that would fund that content. So what is a radio station doing in the mobile context? Well, from our perspective, the growth in mobile is just far faster than any other form of technology we've seen in the last couple of years. So from a radio perspective, how do we feel that we can play a role in mobile? Well, from our perspective, it is about advertising. We're an advertiser-funded business. We don't necessarily see ourselves going directly into transactions, but we want to be one of those brands that can take advantage of the mobile advertising economy. This is John Durr from KP. KP, Kleiner Perkins are one of the largest investors in mobile at the moment. And John really tells this sort of social, local and mobile as a solo mo has been one of their key things that's driving their investment. And really in radio, we see ourselves almost as the original solo mo. Social, local and mobile was really the thing that radio had going for itself, you know, from the UK in the sort of 70s and 80s and before that in the States. So if radio is solo mo, then why can't radio take an active role in the mobile economy? And from Absolute Radio's perspective, we've really focused on three distinctive content areas of music, comedy and football. Our target audience is described as reluctant adults. It's a phrase that we've come up with to help epitomize our brand position. Reluctant adults typically end up being slightly male, slightly more mature, slightly more upmarket, but it gives us a real place in the marketplace. And music, comedy, and football is how we really have taken our brand content into the mobile environment. How are we doing? Well, we've been going for just over 2 years, and just under 18 million people in the UK are now aware of our brand, so we're really pleased with that. But one of the key changes for us as our business is that we've now got to go where our audience are. And our audience are on mobile in their millions. So about 18 months ago, we adopted probably the most aggressive mobile strategy of any radio station in the world. We adopt applications across all platforms. We haven't just gone for the fashionable iPhone or the increasingly fashionable Android. So really for us in 2010, our fastest growing platform was in fact Nokia, because a very large percentage of our audience still own Nokia phones. When they may not be quite as smart as the Android and iPhone devices, but that was a really key learn for us. that sort of listen strategy has accumulated just under 2 million installs in our first 18 months. And so what does that actually mean? Well, if you look at our business through a traditional lens, we probably represent about 3 to 5% of the radio industry in this country. So we're pretty small, 3 to 5% of an industry that's probably only worth about £600 million in terms of annual turnover. If you look through a digital lens, whether that's desktop, streaming, mobile, social, video sharing, we're anywhere between 10 and 25% of the overall commercial market. Giving away something for free on an app store is not a definition of success. The majority of those installs and those downloads never lead to any tangible engagement. And therefore, we really need to understand how we create engagement from those installs and measuring that behavior. So that really what drove that first part of our strategy. We needed to create a listen experience across all the 5 or 6 OSs. We've done that. We're pretty pleased with those 300,000 active users, which will jump up to near to 400,000 probably in February. But it really, that represents a small part of the mobile market, but a relatively big percentage of our overall 3 million community. All of this measurement of mobile, whether it's desktop, mobile devices, tablets, and actual smartphones themselves, allow us to really measure engagement. Because so much of our advertising business model at the moment is based on sample-based estimates, whether it's Barb, whether it's ComScore, whether it's net ratings, whether it's Radar, whether it's Newspaper Society, readership polls. You know, we are sample-based estimates research is dead. You know, Google doesn't estimate anything. Google knows. Apple know the engagement. Facebook know. And media owners, we need to know. We need to actually get real measurement, real accountability. So every time I can convert someone into an IP connection, whether it's desktop or mobile, this chart here includes all of our IP, I know how much engagement how much time people are spending with our brand and that level of engagement. And out of that growth that we're seeing on IP hours, that growth of the last 3 months is heavily driven by mobile. Radio 1 and Radio 2 are 5 times bigger than us. In an IP and mobile world, we're 40 to 50% bigger than them. And this is the BBC, which are pretty good at technology as well. So there's a big incentive for me to drive my community from leaning back in the car, in the kitchen, to leaning forward and engaging through a mobile device or a connected device. And one of the ways that we managed to do that is that we've sort of left behind this reliance on just replicating our business model on mobile. Our mobile strategy has gone way beyond just listen. So here's just 4 or 5 examples of what we do in creating that real engagement. So there could be things like on the left is that we spotted an opportunity in the clock app store. Radio really makes its money before 10 o'clock in the morning. People are charging their mobile phones by their beds. A lot of people probably woke up this morning and maybe even checked their emails while still in their beds or checked Twitter, and that's exactly what consumers are doing. So creating a clock radio that woke people up to the radio on their smartphone was a really interesting way of actually making sure one of the first things you did on your smartphone was think about our radio brand, and it's been hugely successful. We also had a really fantasy football game on our website. So for the last 3 years, we've been doing a cash-driven game, generating visits and page views around fantasy football. Our consumers wanted us to take that onto mobile. So we took that API, put it onto smartphones, and transformed the number of page views and engagement that we get with fantasy football by putting that onto smartphones. Yes, you can listen to Absolute Radio on it. Yes, you can get our content, but actually you're really engaging with this game. It's effectively the closest we get to any form of gamification. Slight element to gamification was time-wasting quiz apps as well. When you're shooting to the bus or you're on the way to the train, or whether you're hanging around, waiting with some friends at a bar, time wasting is a really important part on mobile. And finally, the 2 other areas was we've got an engagement app on the right-hand side with our late night show. We launched a plugin for that with AudioBoo this week, which allows our consumers to upload studio quality audio through our apps for broadcast. And finally, in the middle is by far our most successful. This is our Live Scores app. This is because we have football in our brand footprint, we saw an opportunity to create a free match companion app. So what this effectively does, you download it free currently from the iPhone store, but it launches in Android next week. You set your home team, whether it's Arsenal, Liverpool, Man United, and it gives you push notifications for our very time-starved, reluctant adult audience. Sport is a key part of the success of mobile, and tapping into that with the live scores has been hugely successful for us. Now, to give an example of what success means, this Live Scores app on a typical Premier League Saturday averages 57 minutes of in-app time. That means that our Live Scores community are spending more time in our app than a typical listener is listening to our radio station on a Saturday. That's fine. They're inside our brand. They're hearing and seeing our advertising. Whether they're listening to the radio isn't the definition of a success for us. It's about involved in the Absolute Radio brand. And Live Scores is rarely out the top 20 chart. So how else do we take money? So if it's mobile advertising, it's the analogy I thought was a really interesting way that Simon talked about, that's more money spent on cinema advertising than mobile advertising. We are going to see that change. I think it's going to massively grow. We're already seeing a large number of clients come to us and say, okay, we understand you're a broadcast business. Your ratings suggest you're 3 to 5% in the market. What we really want to work with you in with the big engagement packages. Here's just one I wanted to share. So the RAC, their agency, went out and said, we want to create more installs for their pretty good free RSE app. And typically they might have just done some ad mob, or they might have just done some other form of mobile advertising. But mixing it in broadcast and working with a broadcaster that has a significant mobile community that has some formats, we were able to get a really significant bit of advertising from them. And where part of their ROI was how many installs that they would get off the back of this of this campaign. That's a typical tenancy package that involved radio broadcast and sponsorship and promotions and mobile is one of the key areas of success for us. But we're also a publisher of other advertising formats. So we are an iAd publisher. iAd and AdMob are the market leader, and this is a new emerging platform called Smarto. So from the left, iAd for us as a publisher is by far the most successful revenue generator as a publisher. And you know, it's interesting when I see some of the negativity that might come with iAd, and partly I believe because Apple refused to go on record about commenting about their success with publishers or their success with advertisers. In the space of vacuum, then people will just write copy. In fact, I was talking to New Media Age about that yesterday. And hopefully over the next couple of weeks, we're in a position where we can work with Apple and share some of the success we're seeing. For us at the moment, AdMob is really ineffective. It's very ineffective as a marketing platform, and it's incredibly ineffective as a publisher. I don't know what the problem is. It may be that we haven't nailed the creative execution very well, but normally Google get things right. So I think it's a massive challenge for them. I talk to other brands and they talk to me about AdMob being a really interesting experience and very cheap. But because we're really measuring engagement to our brand right down to becoming a real digital advocate and a click journey that goes into streaming, then really the measure of success for AdMob at the moment is very poor. And it's very early days for that sort of tertiary mobile network as well. So we'll learn a bit more about that. And the other thing I did want to touch on is that as well as being an iAd publisher, we are an iAd advertiser. Now we think we're probably the only European brand that can actually give an examples of what it means to invest in iAd as an advertiser and have the impact of what running other people's iAds as a publisher. And it's absolutely fascinating. Well, as I said, we're going to be in the next couple of weeks working with Apple to actually try and put together some sort of case studies to actually prove how effective iAd is as a publishing platform and advertising platform. And so there's a limit to what I can sort of say in this forum, other than tell you it's spectacularly successful on both sides of the relationship. The levels of engagement, the click-through rates, the time dwelled in ads is vast. And compared to at the moment we're trialing Facebook advertising, YouTube advertising. We're talking about lots of different, and we do a lot of paid search, and all of the benchmarks, including value for money and return on investment, for us as an audio brand, where definition of success is getting someone to consume our content. When success means you can actually immediately, at the start of a click journey, become aware, can trial and advocate our brand and maybe become a real loyalist, that's for us, it's spectacularly successful. And Albion have helped us to deliver that creative. And if you haven't seen iAd creative, I really would recommend as marketeers or as media people, you look at some of the creative that's out there in iAd. It's the in-ad time is very, very long. And finally, smart radio. Where does all this lead? Well, our ambition for this is that we remain a broadcast model. We're advertiser funded, but where it's broadcast one-to-many, could we get to a situation where it's advertising one-to-one? That's our holy grail. We don't believe there's a personalized radio opportunity for our business. Other people may want to do that. We believe in the one-to-many broadcast, and the fact that that's really where we are. But actually, when people connect with us through mobile and through desktop, that we potentially can get a one-to-one relationship and start targeting the advertisers to those end users. And effectively, that's where smart radio sits on this chart. This is another Kleiner-Perkins matrix. What this chart was trying to explain from KP was how important mobile is. And they're saying reach, targeting, engagement, and transaction dwarfs any other form of media, and that's why all their money's going there. 100% reach to mobile, high levels of targeting, high levels of engagement, high levels of transaction compared to desktop, broadcast, print, and outdoor. So they put radio up there as being high reach, low targeting, mid-engagement, and low transaction. And I just inserted this smart radio to give you an idea of why we think they missed out a very important line, which is the combination of radio and IP. Where broadcast radio comes together via IP, we come up with this phrase called smart radio. And it's smart radio, and of course I would say this, we're biased, smart radio can be as effective as mobile in terms of achieving the accountability that KP see from their investments. So I'm conscious I've actually have gone over time, but this all leads us to having remaining ambition of becoming a mobile music and entertainment brand with radio at our core, rather than simply describing ourselves as a radio station. Thank you very much for your time.